I am 82 years old, and today I want to tell you something nobody wants to admit. I want to tell you that living alone is not a tragedy, and that loneliness is often much easier than the wrong company. We are taught from the time we are children that an empty house is a sad house. We are told by the world that sitting alone in a room means you have failed at life, that you are unwanted, that you are just waiting for the end. I believed that lie for a long time. I spent decades surrounding myself with noise, with people, with endless obligations, thinking that the more crowded my life was, the more successful I was. But I am sitting here in my living room right now, and the house is completely empty. The only sound is the steady ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. I have never felt more alive, more whole, and more at peace. My name is William. I worked as a carpenter and a high school shop teacher for over 40 years. I have rough hands. I have a bad left knee from standing on hard concrete floors. And I have a heart that has been broken and healed more times than I can count. Let me tell you about my morning. I wake up at 5 in the morning, long before the sun comes up. I do not use an alarm clock anymore. My body just knows when it is time to start the day. I put on my old wool sweater, the gray one that is fraying at the cuffs, and I walk down the hallway to the kitchen. The wooden floorboards creak under my feet in the dark. I know exactly which boards make a sound, and I step on them intentionally because the sound belongs entirely to me. I make a pot of black coffee. I do not use any fancy modern machines, just an old metal percolator on the gas stove. I stand there and listen to the water bubbling. I smell the dark roasted beans filling the cold kitchen air. I pour a cup and I carry it out to the back porch. I sit in a wooden rocking chair that I built with my own hands 30 years ago. The wood is smooth from decades of use, and it fits my back perfectly. I just sit there and I watch the light slowly turn. The sky from black to a deep purple and then to a pale blue. I watch the dew forming on the grass. I watch the squirrels running along the thick branches of the oak tree in the yard. I do not turn. On a radio, I do not look. At a phone, I do not speak a single word. I just breathe the cold morning air for 2 entire hours. The world asks absolutely nothing of me. There is no one needing me to solve their problems. There is no one asking me what we are having for dinner. There is no one expecting me to entertain them or validate their feelings. There is just the steam rising from my coffee cup and the deep, heavy silence of an ordinary morning. This silence is my absolute sanctuary. It is the hard-earned reward for a lifetime of relentless work. It was not always like this. I was married to my wife Eleanor for 50 years. Eleanor was a wonderful, vibrant woman, but our house was a constant hurricane of activity. We had 3 active children, we had loud dogs, we had neighbors constantly walking through the front door without knocking. I loved her deeply, and I loved the busy life we built together, but it was profoundly exhausting. I spent my days teaching teenagers how to use power tools in a loud, dusty workshop. And I spent my evenings fixing things around the house and managing the chaos of a large family. When Eleanor passed away 7 years ago, the silence that followed her death was terrifying. At first, it felt like a heavy physical weight pressing down on my chest. I wandered around the empty rooms feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. I thought the sudden silence was going to kill me. I left the radio on just to hear a human voice. But as the long years went by, the silence slowly changed. It stopped being a dark void and started being a comforting presence. I realized I was not actually lonely. I was just meeting myself for the very first time in half a century. I started to find a slow, steady rhythm that was entirely my own. But society cannot stand to see an old man who is content by himself. My daughter Sarah means well. She loves me very much, but she is terrified of my solitude. She would come over on Sunday afternoons, look around my quiet, immaculate house, and get a very worried look in her eyes. She would tell me I was isolating myself from the world. She would tell me it was not healthy for a man my age to spend so much time alone in a dusty wood shop out in the garage. My neighbors did the exact same thing. They would see me getting the mail at the end of the driveway, and they would corner me to invite me to community center events, local card games, and senior citizen mixers. They spoke to me with a thick layer of pity in their voices. They assumed that because I was eating my dinner alone, I must be miserable and desperate for interaction. They told me I needed companionship, that I needed to get back out there, that I needed to find a nice woman to share my golden years with. When enough people tell you that, your deep peace is actually a dangerous symptom of depression, you begin to doubt your own mind. You start to wonder if they are right and you are wrong. So at 79 years old, I decided to listen to their advice. I decided to open my front door and let the chaotic world back in. A well-meaning neighbor introduced me to a woman named Margaret. Margaret was a widow, a few years younger than me. She was very vibrant, she was endlessly talkative, and she was absolutely terrified of being left alone with her own thoughts. We started going out for afternoon coffee, then we progressed to evening dinners, and soon she was spending most of her waking hours at my house. Everyone in my life was so incredibly happy for me. My daughter smiled again and stopped worrying. The neighbors gave me approving nods over the fence. They all said William is finally living again. And for the first few weeks, I tried to convince myself it was a nice change of pace. It felt somewhat good to have someone ask about my day, to have someone sitting on the living room couch when I came in from the cold garage. But the brief honeymoon phase ended very quickly, and the harsh reality of merging. Two fully formed, stubborn adult lives became glaringly clear. It started with the small things, the tiny daily compromises that slowly drain your vital energy. Margaret did not like silence at all. She woke up and immediately turned on the large television in the living room. She watched aggressive morning news programs with loud, angry voices arguing about politics and tragedies. That toxic noise would drift down the hallway and directly into my kitchen, completely shattering my sacred morning peace. My dark, quiet mornings were replaced by the blare of pharmaceutical commercials and manufactured anxiety. Then came the physical invasion of my carefully curated sanctuary. Margaret decided my house was too stark and too masculine. She brought over heavily scented plug-in air fresheners that smelled like artificial vanilla and cheap lavender. They gave me a dull ache behind my eyes. She brought dozens of decorative throw pillows and placed them on my worn leather armchair, the specific chair that perfectly supported my aching lower back. I had to move a mountain of pillows every single time I wanted to sit down in my own house. She left damp towels bunched up on the bathroom floor. She constantly rearranged my coffee mugs in the cupboard so I could never find the one I liked to use. My home slowly stopped feeling like my home. It started feeling like a busy waiting room where I was merely an inconvenient guest. But the physical changes in the house were absolutely nothing compared to the deep emotional and financial drain. Margaret had a restless, nervous energy. She always needed to be doing something or going somewhere to avoid facing herself. She wanted to drive to expensive restaurants that were an hour away just to try a new type of soup she saw on television. She wanted to go to crowded, bright shopping malls on Saturday afternoons when the parking lots were completely full. I would walk slowly behind her on the hard tile floors, my bad knee throbbing with every single step, feeling the life force slowly leaking out of my body. When we were at home, her cellular phone was constantly ringing and buzzing. She was always deeply involved in some elaborate drama with her adult children or her vast network of friends. She would spend hours sitting at my kitchen table, complaining bitterly to me about her ungrateful daughter-in-law, pouring all of her negative, highly anxious energy directly into my peaceful space. I became her unpaid therapist and her emotional dumping ground. I had spent 80 long years dealing with the heavy stress of the world, and I was finally free of it, but now I had voluntarily invited someone else's storm into my quiet fortress. I was spending my carefully planned fixed income on expensive dinners I did not even want to eat. I was paying for gasoline to drive to places I had absolutely no desire to visit. I was lying awake in my bed at night, calculating my dwindling savings in the dark, feeling a tight knot of financial anxiety in my stomach that I had not felt since I was paying off my first mortgage in my early 40s. I was doing all of this exhausting work simply to avoid a societal concept of loneliness that I had not even been suffering from in the first place. I was performing the role of the happy companion while my internal battery was completely drained. The final breaking point was not a massive, dramatic argument. It was just an ordinary Tuesday morning in late autumn. I had gone out to my wood shop very early to work on a small, detailed birdhouse. The familiar, earthy smell of cedar shavings was thick in the air. I was running a piece of fine sandpaper along the edge of the wooden roof, completely lost in the simple, repetitive motion. I was entirely calm. Then the heavy door to the shop flew open. Margaret stood there in her thick robe, holding a cup of my coffee. She looked around at the sawdust on the floor, wrinkled her nose in disgust, and told me I was making a terrible mess. She told me to hurry up and come inside because we had to drive to the large hardware store in the city to buy new curtains for my bedroom. She said the old curtains were far too depressing for her taste. I stopped sanding the wood. I looked at the beautiful piece of cedar in my rough hands. I looked around at the quiet, creative space I had built for myself over decades. And then I looked directly at her. In that exact moment, the heavy fog completely lifted from my mind. I realized that I was actively trading the most valuable thing I had left in this world, my remaining time, for the mere appearance of companionship. I was putting on a pathetic performance for society. I was enduring deep physical exhaustion, daily irritation, and severe financial stress, just so. My adult daughter and my nosy neighbors would not think I was a sad, lonely old man. I was betraying my own soul to keep a restless woman entertained, a woman who did not even respect or like the simple way I lived my life. I realized a profound truth right then and there. Keeping the wrong company is vastly more lonely and isolating than being completely by yourself. I put the sandpaper down on the sturdy wooden workbench. I walked over to where she was standing, and I spoke very quietly and very clearly. I told her we were not going to the busy hardware store today. I told her we were not buying any new curtains for my house. I told her that this arrangement was permanently over. She stared at me in absolute shock. She told me I was being incredibly foolish. She raised her voice and told me I was going to die alone and miserable in this dusty old house. I did not argue with her. I just waited for her to finish. Oh, she packed up her numerous throw pillows. She unplugged her artificial vanilla air fresheners. And she drove her car out of my driveway for the last time. My daughter called me that evening, very upset and confused, asking me why I had pushed away such a nice, caring woman. I did not try to explain the deep philosophy of my decision to her. I just told her that I was very tired and that I was finally going to rest. I gently hung up the phone. I walked over to the heavy front door and I locked the metal deadbolt. I walked slowly through the house and I turned off every single light except the small lamp in the kitchen. I sat down in my old, comfortable leather chair. I did not have to move any decorative pillows out of my way. The house was completely, beautifully silent again. There was no television blaring from the other room. There was no cellular phone ringing or buzzing on the counter. There was no one expecting me to be anything other than exactly who I was in that moment. I closed my tired eyes and I felt a massive wave of pure relief wash over my entire body. A relief so strong that it actually brought warm tears to my eyes. It was the exact feeling of taking off a heavy backpack after walking 10 miles uphill in the rain. I had my sanctuary back. I had my life back. I had myself back. I am telling you this personal story because I know for a fact there are people listening to my voice right now who are caught in the exact same miserable trap. You are in your 60s, your 70s, or your 80s, and you are surrounded by people who constantly drain your life force. You are saying yes to social invitations you absolutely dread. You are letting grown family members dump their toxic, unresolved problems heavily onto your fragile shoulders. You are dating people who irritate your spirit just because you are deeply afraid of an empty house. You are exhausting your aging body trying to make everyone else comfortable, while you are slowly suffocating in your own living room. Society desperately wants you to believe that if you choose to stay home, if you choose to lock your front door and sit alone in the quiet, you are giving up on life. They tell you that staying home is a form of laziness or depression. I am here to look you in the eye and tell you that staying home is energy protection. When you are young, your daily energy is like a massive rushing river. You can waste it, you can spill it, you can give it away to strangers, and it just keeps flowing endlessly. When you are my age, your energy is a very small, precious cup of water. You absolutely cannot afford to pour it out on the dry ground for people who do not even appreciate the sacrifice. You have to guard that cup fiercely. You have to decide very carefully who gets to drink from your limited supply. Do not ever let anyone make you feel guilty for deeply wanting peace. You have spent your entire life working hard, raising children, paying endless bills, navigating terrible traffic, dealing with demanding bosses, and managing sudden crises. You have paid your heavy debt to society in full. You have done your duty to the world. The precious time you have left belongs entirely and unconditionally to you. If you want to spend 3 days in a row reading old books and not speaking a single word to another human being, that is your absolute right. If you want to eat a simple, quiet bowl of soup for dinner instead of going to a loud, expensive, crowded restaurant, that is your right. If you want to permanently cut ties with a relative who brings nothing but chaotic drama and deep pain into your life, that is your right. You are not a bad person for finally choosing yourself. You are not selfish for wanting a calm, completely still harbor after a lifetime of sailing in violently stormy seas. We are all going to leave this earth eventually, and we will all have to make that final, mysterious journey completely alone, learning to be truly comfortable in your own company, learning to face the silence without flinching is the most important preparation you can possibly make for the end. So I want you to look closely around your life today. Look at the relationships that feel incredibly heavy to carry. Look at the obligations that make your chest feel tight with anxiety. Give yourself full permission to let them go right now. Give yourself permission to say no without offering a long apology. Give yourself permission to stay home and do absolutely nothing. Clean out your physical and emotional space. Remove the uncomfortable throw, pillows you do not like. Unplug the artificial air fresheners that give you a headache. Stop answering the telephone for people who only call to complain about their own choices. Reclaim your living room. Reclaim your quiet mornings and reclaim your peace of mind. The quiet is not your enemy. It is the only place where you can finally hear your own breathing and meet your true self. Peace is incredibly expensive. Stop giving it away for free. If you understand what I have been talking about today, I want you to take a deep breath right now. I want you to look around your own house and realize that you are the absolute master of your domain. You do not owe your final years to anyone else's expectations. You have earned the right to simply exist. Please remember my words the next time your phone rings and you feel that familiar dread in your stomach. You can just let it ring. The world will keep turning if you do not answer. If this story resonated with your soul, I hope you will return to listen to more of my thoughts. You can subscribe to this channel and share this message with someone who desperately needs to hear it. We are building a quiet rebellion here, a community of people who have finally realized the true value of silence. Thank you for sitting with an old man today. Now go make yourself a cup of coffee, lock your door, and enjoy your beautiful, hard-earned peace.